So I've fallen a little bit behind on my Superman and Lois episode reviews, so here's my quick catch-up on the last 3 episodes. Hi, my name is Sean, and I love to talk about movies and TV way too much. With that in mind, go ahead and join me down below in the comment section. Let me know, what did you think about the last 3 episodes of Superman and Lois, and how all the big plot lines they've been setting up to this point are coming together to kind of have our big conflict of this season. As we go into this will be spoiler review. I've assumed you've watched the episodes. And for those of you wondering why I've fallen behind on my reviews, I just got busy in real life. A couple weeks back, I was volunteering at my church with kind of the teenagers. Last week, I had a couple of different kind of speaking gigs that I did. And just because of that, something had to get pulled off of my plate, and Superman and Lois reviews were it. But I have been watching, still enjoying the show, still, as of this point in time, would say it's potentially the best first season of an Arrowverse show up to this point in time. I just wasn't able to review the episodes as they dropped. So the 3 kind of episodes I missed was the one from 2 weeks back where it was the talent show while Jordan and Superman were getting cases of the sniffles, and from the kryptonite from the episode before that. And then Morgan Edge decides to use his little beeper deal to call in all of the people to attack the Kent family. At the end of it, we have the big gigantic reveal that Morgan Edge is in fact Kal-El's brother in some sense. That leads us to the next episode where we kind of give the backstory and understand that Morgan Edge has been here for a while. He's Kal-El's half-brother. And then it kind of leads to Morgan Edge launching all of these people that he's been reprogramming, all the Smallvillians that he's been reprogramming to attack. And through using the technology, Kal-El is able to actually talk with his Kryptonian mother, figure out what she needs to do, or he needs to do to kind of reverse all of this. And in doing so, expends all of his energy to remove the brainwashing from all of these people. And that leads us to this week's episode, where the first 2/3 are trip down memory lane and kind of showing his origin story. A bunch of the classic Superman images, but their version of it. And then in the final third, we realize that this was in fact just his brother picking through his brain, trying to find his weakness, trying to figure out how to get him to submit so that he could convert him to gain control of him, so that he could do this next phase of his plan or new version of his plan, since the original one with all the other people failed. So now he's got this new plan to find leverage on Clark Kent Kal-El. So that's the 3 episodes that I'm playing catch up on. In general, I like that we're building to the final showdown. We're actually getting kind of the big payoff, not just kind of the family drama. We're getting to the comic booky action side of things. And at the same time, as we're doing that, we're seeing the limitations of the show because they can't actually do big blockbuster action because that's obviously a TV show and not even the highest budgeted TV show out there. And so then as we do kind of the big showdown in last week's episode, you just see a bunch of people flying. And how does it play out? They laser vision an item, and that's how they're defeated. There's no actual big showdown between Superman and a bunch of Kryptonians just laser eyeing an artifact to stop them. And that's the stuff where that's not what you would do if you had a bigger budget. And so I think there's a couple things like that felt a bit underwhelming, because it's what we've been building towards for 10 episodes. We built towards that showdown, and then it was like, okay, yeah, I kind of hope that would be a little bit more than that. And we're only 2/3 of the way through the season, so there's more to come. There's more opportunity, but they did kind of have all the Kryptonians. What's he been working on? Final battle, or one of the final big gigantic battles. No, wasn't actually that big or that final of a battle. So there's a little bit of disappointment in it. As for the big reveal about Morgan Edge, what he's really up to, with Superman, I think you kind of, there's only so many villains that can pose a physical threat to him because he's Superman. And the more powerful you make Superman, the more difficult it is to come up with a compelling threat to him. So that's why we tend to lean into Kryptonians. We, as if I'm the writer. That's why the writers tend to lean into Kryptonians and finding other ways that there's more of them actually on Earth, because they're the people that can actually be a physical threat to him in a way that's legitimate, that you buy into it. It doesn't feel cheap. They don't have to just keep relying on, and then they got kryptonite, and then they kidnapped someone he loved. Kryptonians can actually be a threat in some way. And so pulling that in early on, having family ties, and, you know, so much of his identity is last son of Krypton. There's another Kryptonian. It starts to make sense as to why there's actual kind of not appeal, but there's an actual draw. There's an actual temptation in what he's doing that could pull Cal in some sense. You know, it sometimes can feel a little bit heavy-handed, but minor complaint. I was like, okay, cool. I wasn't 100% like, yeah! Like when we went with Steel, we got John Henry Anderson, I was just like, yes, this is awesome where we're going with this. And I wasn't quite with the Kryptonian stuff. I was like, okay, yeah, that's okay. That makes sense that's kind of what we're building towards. I am pretty excited to see when we start doing this final showdown of Steel being pulled back into the mix. I was kind of hoping that we'd get him in these couple episodes of like, it's happening, John, join me. But I guess they wanted to hold off so he would be battling our Superman. I get it. And all of that leads us to this week's episode. I pretty well just loved the first 2/3 of this episode. If you're familiar with my history with comic book stories or my channel in general, you know I love origin stories. I love Superman. I love even this character in that he's has all the powers of the world, but decides to use them in such altruistic means, chooses to live kind of this humble life. And then they really showed most of it as really a love story. That makes sense in light of the title of the show and what it's really about. But, just have all these lingering shots of the two of Clark and Lois, or Superman and Lois, making googly eyes at each other and having that chemistry as you can see, they just immediately started to like her. How did that play out? When did he tell her certain things? I loved all that stuff. But I would have been fine if that had been the whole episode. I would have liked to see more of that. Like as per the language I'm using, the final third, I was like, okay, cool. I mean, I had to tie in somehow. This makes sense. I got you. I see what's going on here. Cool. I would have liked to have even more of this, lingering a bit longer on, when he tells Lois that he's Superman, like getting more of her reaction and how some of this played out. They did a montage, and it was a great montage, and it pulled on all the emotions that I wanted. But, I would have liked to linger a little bit more. I would have liked to see even more of kind of the TV interview. All of that stuff, it could have been twice as long, all of it, and I would have been happy. And we kind of move into the last little bit, and, it's kind of the bridge that bridged why are we doing flashback episode, bridging that to where we're going next in light of what happened before, what's happening next, and works well enough. I didn't mind it, didn't bug me or anything like that. I saw one of my YouTube buddies, Jaron, he's called this a filler episode. I couldn't disagree more. I get his point that it doesn't dramatically progress everything forward until you get to the final 10 minutes or whatever. But on a show called Superman and Lois, you want to see where Superman and Lois met each other. I love the classic Superman imagery of him forming the Fortress of Solitude in his training, and that this version of Superman is kind of a very joyful, hopeful Superman. Love Henry Cavill as Superman, but he's intentionally much more conflicted. There's a lot of deconstruction of heroes in Zack Snyder's world. Zack Snyder's not inherently a joyful, hopeful storyteller. That's just not his shtick. I love his shtick, but it's not that. And so then this version, you get to see him like running and he's just smiling, and then he's he sees Lois and they falls in love. I loved all of that stuff and what they're doing. So like for me, I would not in any way call this a filler episode. Like it might be my favorite episode because of the first 2/3 of it. Even though it is kind of like, hey, let's just go back and tell all the classic stuff. I'm totally fine with that. It's a nice addition for this show and something I think you want. Like, we're seeing the family and their kids, teenagers. I love that variation. But I want a little bit of that classic Superman. How did they get here? What him as the reporter? What was that like? So I ate all of that up. That first 2/3 is some of my favorite stuff of this entire show. And as has been set up to this point in time, I'm really enjoying this show. So once again, to close it all out, 3 more episodes, thoroughly enjoyed. Yeah, some of the reveals, didn't 100% wow me as I might have hoped they would have. Certainly the big battle was a bit underwhelming, probably almost certainly because of the budget constraints that you can only do so much. But still, shows stay in the course of being right on target to be my favorite season of Arrowverse up to this point in time. And I've been watching Arrowverse since night number 1, Arrow dropped. I was waiting for Arrowverse as soon as Green Arrow showed up on Smallville during season 6, and there were just kind of internet speculation, hopefuls that maybe he would get his own spinoff. Justin Hartley never got his own show, but eventually did, in a certain sense, morph into Arrow, and here we are 9 years later, and I'm talking about what the 8th show, the 7th show, I don't know how many it is, and from my perspective, this might be the best season yet. Yeah, I love Superman, so that helps a lot. But those are just really good. And they're pulling it off really nicely. So I'll tell you right now, my review for next week's episode won't be out on Tuesday night. I'm getting access to Black Widow early next week. So Tuesday night, I will actually be watching Black Widow. So I won't be watching Superman and Lois as it debuts. So hopefully I'll be able to get a review out next week, but it will be delayed at least a little bit. Thank you so much for watching. Tell me what you thought down below in the comments, and keep talking movies and TV too much.